In the studio is a social commentator, Japhet Odesonya. Good morning and happy Democracy Day.
Good morning, Vero. Happy Democracy Day.
You're welcome. Yeah. Now, behind the scene, you were telling us about your June the 12th experience, and because it's important we tell the stories so that the younger generation will understand how things were at the time when it comes to election or the electioneering process as it is, and how much influence people wield when it comes to their power to decide who leads them. So talk to us from that perspective, what your experience was at the time.
Thank you. It's extremely nostalgic, you know. When you talk about June 12th, I have the feeling, you know, the sense of having witnessed conspiracy at its highest level.
When you say conspiracy, how do you mean?
We'll get there. Okay. Not only conspiracy, abandonment, recklessness, manipulation, arbitrary use of power, you know, and abnormal height of insensitivity. Then you can you will be pardoned to describe it as governmental insanity.
Choice of words, please.
No.
As much as we want to express our views, we must also understand the sensitivities of some of these words.
When we say that, we mean that because it is what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I was 18 years, going to be 19 in the October that year. I will be 50 this October. So that was my baptism with democracy.
Right.
So I was an active participant. I lived with an uncle who was a lawyer. So he could influence us. This is democracy. You got to participate. And so I queued. It was in the primary school, open, transparently conducted. And we were counted. Open ballots. Free. Fair. People have forgotten to use what MKO used in the Epetedo. Okay. All we will say is it was the freest and the fairest and the most peaceful. He said it was the cleanest. He used that in the Epetedo. Don't forget that. It was the cleanest indeed. It was so clean and pure, extremely peaceful. You know, it made us forget the days of ethnicization and politicization. No tribalism. You know, it was not a matter of Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, Fulani. No. It was about the people and democracy. And so I am glad I was involved. Look at that experience. 31 years after. Here we are. But I'm happy. We have an untruncated democracy, at least for 25 years now. Abiola was complaining then that we've had 24 years of military out of our 34 years of independence. 24 years of military out of 34. So we merely had 10 years of experience to romance the lady, beautiful lady called democracy. After which, military incursion, interregnum. And we felt military must go back to barracks. The only reason they give us will be people are not ready, people are not pregnant, they are not practicing the game, they are not playing the game according to rules and all sorts. And that was what Babangida also did. And the people felt power must not always flow from the barrels of gun. In your own thinking, if that is your ideology, we must let you know that power flow from the people. And the people own the sovereignty. There is no country, there is no state without the people.
Absolutely.
So it is about the people. And that was what happened. People came out to exhibit the dictatorship of the proletariat, like Karl Marx would have said. And we got to that stage. But it took us 6 years to chase the military. 1993 election, June 12, Abiola had to hibernate. After the election, that was cleanly won. 58.4% of victory. 20 out of 30 states, landslide victory. Then a man felt, because I'm your friend, there's power struggle, there's class struggle, and we can truncate this whimsically. And that was what happened.
So you feel it was whimsical because there were actually reasons that was given. I mean, reasons that were given regarding that. One of the reasons why it was said that IBB annulled the presidential election was MKO's recalcitrance and blatant disobedience to accede to his request to take the former NLC leader, Pascal Bayfal, as his vice presidential candidate. So, and then he warned MKO of the, consequences of not acceding to that.
That's part of government tactics, government techniques, the use of power, the play of politics in display. That was all about that. It's not his own thing to say this must be the vice, and it was not about that. It was just about the class. Some people will tell you that immediately after the primary, when Abiola won, one general immediately said, this man must not become the next president. He won't become the next president. That was at the primary level. So those behind the scenes, dealings and all that, it's not about that. It should be about democracy. You started it. You gave us Ofreunwosu. At the same time, you were planning with Sincerity of Association of Better Nigeria, which was registered earlier enough. You had planned the truncation even before the beginning of the process. That was deliberate. And you call him Maradona. But you see, I think these men were too lucky, and to have played with the collective destiny of the most populous black nation on earth.
How do you mean? You need to expatiate some of the things you use because you're using some very sensitive and critical words, and people would like to understand better.
Like what?
What you mean? You said these men were lucky.
They were lucky.
What should it have been?
These are men that we fed with the tax of the nation, with the treasury of the nation. They went to good school. They were trained as army. Only to combat the system, fight the system, thinking they were fighting each other. It's abhorrent. That's what I'm saying. Look at them. Look at that generation. Babangida, MKO, Obasanjo, all of them. Look at that beautiful generation. Sin, the generation that should take us out of the wood. And look at where we are. It is ironical, extremely paradoxical that we are still here with our exposure. You see, so men must learn to know the essence of power. That's where I'm heading.
Right.
Power is essentially about responsibility to the people.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Let me just quickly let our viewers know that at the top of the hour, we will join Nigeria Television Authority, that's NTA, for the presidential broadcast, just to let our viewers know. Right. So we still have some time before that broadcast is done. But let me quickly touch on the Epetedo Declaration itself, as it is. Do you think that that declaration was necessary at the time for Chief MKO Abiola to have made? How critical was it, when you're trying to situate the issues that happened? Because it was after that time he was arrested.
Yes. The declaration, I think, was on June 11,
right,
1994. That was almost a year, just eve of the, June 12 first anniversary and he came back. I remember I was also part of the, the people, the mass of the people that welcomed Abiola at the local wing of the Muritala International. Yeah. He came in here, France. I remember. King Gibe was not with him. King Gibe had to join him before they both disembarked from the flight. I was there. I saw that. Very charismatic, loving, man, full of smiles always. So I saw that. And it was after that he declared at the Epetedo. But even before then, it was getting too long. The momentum was waning. The struggle was becoming weak. He had gone outside the shores of the country for too long. And we felt he was to internationalize and externalize appropriately. So coming, we felt after that speech, something serious must follow. And nothing happened. What followed was his arrest on June 22, 11 days after the June 11th, and he was arrested. And when he was arrested, he had the opportunity to even speak with reporters of BBC. Yeah. And he was so cheerful. The reporter was saying, "You seem cheerful." And you know what he said? He said, "It is typical of African nations that whoever lead must be incarcerated." And he mentioned Mandela and Jomo Kenyatta. And he referred even in his speech to the Rivanna experience, 1960-something, about Mandela's trial. That was Abiola for you, loaded with history. But what I sensed, that was conspiracy, international conspiracy.
How do you mean?
He felt, "Chief, you sound cheerful about this." He said, "Yes, it's not a big deal. You will go to jail. But for the sacrifice and the good, if it is for the good of the nation, that's what South Africans will call Amade la Kumfa. Amade la Kumfa means self-sacrifice in the interest of the nation." He felt if he had to sacrifice his entirety, the whole of himself, so that peace will remain and prosperity will come to the people, let it be so. We must not lose sight of that. He was a great man. The thing could have led to war. And we were expecting that. So trigger a war, guerrilla warfare to start with, so that people will know that people need the power, not the military.
All right, interesting. As it is, I would have want to follow up with a question, but because of our time, we need to... Okay. The question was, are you saying that indeed it was necessary for him to make that declaration?
It was necessary. Even though it was coming late, but it was necessary. And that's why we can refer to that now. For the purpose of historicity, that it has become part of our history. If he had not said that, it would have been too blank, it would have been too blur. But that declaration, doing it at Epetedo, which is also a historic nerve, I understand some freed slaves and all that who were exiled, hibernated there. They lived there.
Some say it was because he didn't get a place. It was only Epetedo that welcomed him.
And he had his lieutenants, most of them around himself. It was probably not properly so planned. I think it was reactionary. I would have preferred a more revolutionary approach. I would have made my speech from outside the country, declare a government of national unity like he did. I would have done it from outside, from exile. And we balkanize the system and know which side is more popular.
Yes, sir.
All right. Because I'm hearing that we need to join the national broadcast as it is, because it's already 7 o'clock. So we will be heading over to NTA now to join the network for the president's statement for June the 12th. All right, we just listened to the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria make his Democracy Day speech. That's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And he highlighted some key issues that I'll just give an overview of. He congratulated Nigerians for 25 years of uninterrupted democratic rule, and also that he acknowledged that we have entered 31 years of our rites of passage into democracy. And then he also honored Nigerians who lost their lives in the process of fighting for democracy, and also talked about those who were in exile and were pushing for this fight for democracy that stirred up the fire, and those who were at home sustained it. He touched on a number of issues, talked about the sacrifices that have been made, said that Nigeria was on course with regards to democracy, that we made the right decision, and we are on course with regards to that. And then he went ahead to talk about the role of journalists in the fight against military rule, how they mounted the barricades, ensuring that the military understood what Nigerians wanted at the time. He mentioned a number of media houses at the time. He talked about the power of the people proved more potent than the power of the guns. He said that democracy is neither a foreign nor abstract concept devoid of real-life meaning for us. And he also went ahead to highlight key issues at this time, talking about the economy and how that he feels the pain of Nigerians. He mentioned the matter of minimum wage. A whole lot of issues were mentioned in this Democracy Day speech, and we still have our guest in the studio with us, social commentator Japhet Odesanya. Thank you for still staying with us. And then we have joining us at this point, lawyer, civil rights activist, founding director, Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, Abiola Akiode Afolabi. Good morning. Happy Democracy Day. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, talk to us. You listened to the speech. What for you was the major highlight in that speech made by the president?
Democracy, activism. Yeah, the president's speech, very comprehensive, all-embracing. And I have never had any Nigerian president make this kind of speech. It's emotional. That you could mention Chima Ubani, you know, Lisa Gbakoba, Frank Kokori, Pa Frederick Wani, Wole Soyinka. I don't think any president has done that before. We've always paid lip service. For once, we must give it to him because he has agreed that he's a beneficiary of that process.
Absolutely.
Of that struggle. Like where Segun Mayegun will tell you, without any apology anywhere, Tinubu will carry 5-liter petrol on his laps on Okada in Lagos Island to give to demonstrators. That was active participation. No doubt, he's been part of us, and I am not disappointed. I want to thank Mr. President, especially. I want to congratulate him and I congratulate Nigerians. We are making headway. We are getting there. You see, realizing that truly these things happened. It served, like Franz Fanon would say, it is not enough to know the word. It is more valuable to change it. So, Mr. President has done well, appreciating that these things we are talking truly happened and there were actors.
All right.
When he mentioned them, he talked about minimum wage.
All right. If you could just hold the thought. Okay. We have Abiola Akyode-Afolabi back online now. Like we mentioned, she is a lawyer, civil rights activist, founding director, Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center. Earlier on, you were reacting to the speech of the president, but we could not really hear you. So you can go ahead with the line of thought you had earlier on.
All right, thank you very much. I was trying to analyze the president's speech, and I started with his attempt to define democracy and, in his own word, as a system of government that allows for self-determination, that allows for freedom of speech, opinion, and a lot of other things in terms of diversity. It's recognition about the diversity of the country, and also eulogizing those who have contributed, to this country immensely in time past, and those who are still there currently, by mentioning people like Femi Falana and other elders and leaders, of this country, that they work together at the same time in the early years, to support democracy. We'll not forget that the president also called himself a beneficiary of that process because he also participated, in the process. But be that as it may, one would have expected the president to go beyond reaction, those issues, and also celebrating people, but also to talk more, to the reality of the day. He talked about the minimum wage, but of course we all know that there are still conversations around what minimum wage, it's appropriate, for Nigeria, for Nigerians in the current situation of economic reality, which the president himself, talked about. He talked about his plan for economic reforms. When Nigerians are here, they are suffering. There are a lot of issues, that one would have expected that the president would have talked about. The issue of insecurity is a major issue, and I didn't find that, coming up, from the conversation, of the president, especially if we look at how I am in Kaduna today, and I know as at yesterday, there were issues of banditry, people are being kidnapped on a daily basis. The roads are bad. So there are other fundamental things. There are things that make up democracy that one would have thought that the president would use today, which is the 25 years of democracy. I am sure what he wanted to see in 1999 is not what we are seeing now. Yeah, it may say maybe it's not entirely the cause of the problem of today, but there is a need for more vision, more step, more contribution, to make Nigeria to get to the day of the dream that we're talking about. I could remember in 1993, I was a final year student, and I was a students' union leader at that point in time. And we had visions, we had dreams. We thought Nigeria would be better than where we are today. And I'm so sure the president also should think in that way for what he had contributed at that point in time. So if we are here, I think it's a time for reflection. And it's a time for honest truth that we need to do more. We need to build further and more and better, strong institutions. We need to effectively deal with policies. We are not short of policies. We are not short of fund. And I say that because we see how much money the National Assembly is collecting, and we are debating. Zamfara is saying that they can only pay 35,000 naira as minimum wage. And states, Lagos is talking about 75,000 naira. Then you ask the Lagos state government, how is that possible? How can people even take transportation, without 75,000 naira to go to a workplace? So there are fundamental things. And I believe that the president should have gone deeper than us just touching those issues, on the surface. We need more deepened conversation on the kind of democracy that we have. And I will stop here because there are more issues. The issues of democracy enabling opinions. And we can also see, even yesterday, the International Press Center was cordoned off by military people, by police. So there are threats. There are threats, and the president cannot pretend not to see these threats. The threats that are appearing like the threats that we saw during the dictatorial period. And he said it's not a dictator. Yes, so we agree. So, but we cannot continue to have the shades of dictatorship in a so-called democracy. I'll stop for now.
So I would like to stay with you. Looking at the president's speech vis-a-vis what we are commemorating today, Democracy Day, the president actually talked about, his economic reforms, and Nigerians are, before today reacting to the economic reforms, some reacting positively, others are saying that that's exactly what we needed, a long time ago, even though we have to go through, the throes of, the reversion to what some of the things that we're supposed to do, as Nigerians, misgovernance and all of that. Do you not feel that the president acknowledging this, in a speech shows that he's actually driving towards, a point, driving towards emancipating Nigeria, the economic woes of this country, to something better for us in the future?
Well, we can't see it because we can't see it because people live by what they see on a daily basis. What we want is a transformation that is sustainable. Nigerians have suffered enough, so asking them to suffer more, it's not right, it's not ideal. As we speak today, $1 to a naira is about 1,500. So what reform? So what is the and I can hear from his speech saying that we need to suffer before we enjoy. People are saying you don't need to die before they enjoy. So is it the so-called removal of fuel subsidy that had led to increase in commodities? You say that there are issues, and we have to be realistic. In the past 1 year, it has been a huge pressure on Nigerians. A bag of rice sells for over 100. A bag of beans sells for over 200. Nigerians have to eat. People are no longer eating. Things are really becoming very bad. And I think that, the president's speech should be much more humane. It should be much more humane and speak to the reality of Nigerians. And as I see it, we're not prioritizing. It's not about polemics. It's not about how beautiful the speech is or who are we quoting and all of that. It's not. So it's about how do we make speech that really speak to the heart of the people. Nigerians need that kind of speech, not the speech that can whip sentiments, but the speech that can deal with us as citizens.
But do you not think that oftentimes, sorry to jump in your line of thought, but do you not think that oftentimes we lay all of these blames at the doorstep of the president? We often say that the buck stops at the table of the president, but not only the president. We have subnationals, we have government, even the citizens. What roles do you think the governors have been playing, the citizens themselves have been playing in emancipating us from these economic doldrums?
Yeah. But let's remember. Saying that the president should be much more humane.
All right, I guess we have some challenge there. Let's come back to the studio. Japhet, you listened to all she said. She said we need more people-centric conversation, yes. Something that really reflects what the situation is at the time. That was what she expected. Yes. She mentioned the matters of insecurity. She was hoping the president will highlight that, and also talked about the matter of the national minimum wage as it is. Yeah. Well, I remember that the president touched on the minimum wage in his speech, and he talked about negotiations still going on, conversations still going on with regards to that. I believe perhaps he cannot mention anything here until certain things have been concluded behind closed doors. But what do you make of all that she has said, this speech not being people-centric enough?
I think she's correct, no doubt about that. She's correct. However, well, we are coming from the path of ruination, and stagnation. So Therefore, we must also temper justice with mercy. That has been my own standpoint. It's just a year in the saddle, fine. Much is expected. And like the president said, he wants the people to vanguard and defend democracy. Hungry people will not do that. Hungry citizens cannot do that. Citizens who feel the government still exhibits profligacy, and unnecessary affluence will not do that. So we must be careful. We must be guided. We must be seen to be people-centric, like she said. I agree with that. I would also have expected that the particular amount to be paid as minimum wage would have been dished out today. And enough of this minimum wage. We should be talking living wage.
Absolutely. So we'll definitely come back to that. I understand we have Mrs. Abiola Akinode-Afolabi, back on Zoom. So you were going to respond to my question a little earlier regarding the fact that we often lay the blames at the doorstep of the president, even though we have the subnationals and even the market people. We see some of the things that even Nigerians themselves do to contribute to the woes of this economy. What say you?
Well, let me start from always laying blames at the doorstep of the presidency. This morning, the president was very clear. What he did was also rehash his oath of office and to say here is air for Nigerians and is ready to do everything to make sure that. You see, negotiations with subnationals are done at elections. The presidents have interest in who becomes the governor of one state or the other. So yes, we claim to have what we call federalism, which ordinarily should have a separation between the center, the subnational, and also the national. But we all know that all of them go cap in hand, to the center. So it's not like the president does not have influence on those, existing structures, or the president cannot negotiate, the way he's negotiating with the NLC, also with subnationals in terms of what the minimum wage would be. And for me, that's what I call the people-centric. Why that might not be, asking him to go beyond what is expected constitutionally, from his office. But it's about speaking for the people. He talked about his oath of office. He has a primary responsibility to ensure security and welfare of Nigerians. And welfare means what? It means our ability to be able, to live in a manner, that is acceptable. Nigerians are not living in that manner. There's no middle class anymore. There's no middle class, So because middle class cannot even agree. You cannot even, live as expected. So there are a lot of issues. And unfortunately, there are expectations that this current president will be able to bring together economic giants, economists who could probably be able to resolve the problem. But it looks like the president is not.
But there are those who would say that this is just a year of his administration. Can he handle all of these issues in 1 year? Can he address them in 1 year?
He cannot, but we should see the path. So what we are seeing does not show that there's going to be a path. If we have 1,400, to $1 as at today, what do you think we're going to have next year? And there are negotiations that this is going to come back. So we saw it go back to 9 and, went back and became like a permanent thing. So it does not show that this is going to get better in the coming period. And we're not seeing steps. We're not seeing commitment. We're not seeing actions even from the CBN governor, who is supposed to take steps to address some of these economic problems, despite all the expectations by Nigerians. So my point is that for every step that the president is making, Nigerians are not feeling, that these are issues that are thought through. These are issues that are, done in a strategic manner to address and alleviate the kind of poverty that Nigerians are facing today. For me, celebrating 25 years is an important time for us to sit and reflect that President must refocus in the coming year. We cannot come back another 2 years and the country remain this way. Something may shift. And that's why it's an important conversation that we need to have. The president needs to re-strategize. We need to be more people-centric. Nigerians are suffering. They cannot, everything is rent here. You are paying for electricity, you're paying, and you can't find the electricity, water, you can't find the water, transportation, the roads are bad, food, there's no food. So it's really, if you recall, one of the reasons why the man that we are celebrating today, MKO Abiola, came up was also to be able to respond. So if we have not been able to
All right. That was lawyer, civil rights activist, founding director, Women Advocates Research and Documentation Center, Abiola Akyode Afolabi, speaking with us on the President's Democracy Day speech. We must thank you so much for giving us your time, Abiola Akyode Afolabi. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Right. Let's bring the conversation back to the studio where we have Japhet Odesonya speaking with us. She mentioned something because the matter of isn't it too early in 1 year to expect the president to be able to address all of the myriad of issues that we have as it is? Remember, he talked about what he met when he took up the responsibility, this responsibility as it is, and he is willing to take the difficult route to addressing these issues. But she is saying that we must have this conversation so that perhaps next year, in 2 years, we do not keep talking about these things.
Yeah.
And that the president needs to re-strategize.
Yes, fundamentally. That's very much in order. Very, very correct. And I hope that Mr. President, well, one thing I have noticed about him is he's very sensitive to criticism. And that's one good side of this regime. And I want to believe by the time we'll be talking second year in office, there are things that we should have, stopped talking about because we would have seen the direction. That's my expectation. And beyond that, I want Nigerians to remain resolute. I want to appeal that Nigerians must remain resolute. We must never be dragged or be persuaded under any guise to go back to military. And the government must do a lot in that direction too, by providing the fundamental needs of the people. And what are they? Very basic. Security and the welfare. What was June 12 about? What was Abiola preaching? Abiola said, life more abundant. That was the mantra. Giving abundant life to the people of Nigeria. So how have we fared in that regard? These are the things I want the present administration to look into. People must be properly fed. We need food on the table of average Nigerians. Like I said the last time here, even 100,000 naira will not help. So what's the conversation about 70,000, 65?
All right.
We must move forward and see that Nigerians deserve better things.
Absolutely.
Then they will defend and vanguard democracy.
As it is. Okay. Yeah. We have joining us now Professor Yahaya Tanko Baba, political economist, Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto, as it is. Thank you so much for joining us. Good morning. Happy Democracy Day. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Let's quickly get your perspective of the President's Democracy Day speech, first of all, then we look at other issues.
Yeah, I think the President's speech is quite encompassing. And of course, he took Nigerians through, reflections on what had happened, in the June 12 election, the sacrifices, democracy activists and advocates made, after the annulment of June 12 election, those who lost their lives, those who have to flee the country, those who had to remain, both the injuries, psychologically, physically, imprisonment, and so on and so forth, just to see, that democracy is actually enthroned in this country. He paid tribute. To those gallant democracy advocates and activists, And he also, assured Nigerians that as one major beneficiary of that struggle, that sacrifice, he is actually, as the president and commander-in-chief of the armed forces under this democratic dispensation, not going to disappoint Nigerians. He's going to fight the flag of democracy really high, and that, of course, what Nigerians fought for decades back, to the enthronement of democratic order in the country 25 years back. As the president now elected, 1 year into his office, he had, rolled out plans, reforms, transformation that will see to revitalization of the Nigeria's economy, and of course creating environments democratic environment that is not only safe but is fair, is free, that will give Nigerians that beauty of democracy that they fought for, decades back, And he also consoled Nigerians, in a way, with the hardship that actually ensued as a result of this. Some of these reforms that have been long overdue, and that better days are ahead of Nigerians. These reforms will yield growth. It will actually generate employment. It will create wealth. It will also, create atmosphere conducive and congenial, for Nigerians to actually, enjoy the fruits of democracy. And for those who live their lives and those who made sacrifices, even, in their absence, for the people of Nigeria to actually see that their sacrifices are not in vain, and so on and so forth. I think this sum up, the thoughts, about what the president has just spoken, in his speech about the reflection on Nigeria's democracy.
Right. The president actually emphasized democracy as a way of life. And if you see some of the components of democracy, we talk about free and fair elections, separation of powers, representative government. You also look at the rule of law, which is also inclusive in the 8-point agenda of this administration. Talk about the independence of judiciary, civil liberties, and active citizenship. And lastly, which is free press. Most of these things were actually re-echoed in the president's speech. So how do you feel that this current administration can actually, make this vision and translate it into practical policies and programs?
Yeah, I think this is quite difficult for the president. It's a challenge that he has to take, head on. Nigeria's democratic environment is still not well engraved. It's still not deepened. We still have huge challenges with freedom, with liberties. The question of rule of law is still, a serious one that Nigeria's democracy is grappling with. Supremacy of the law, equality of all before the law, fundamental human rights. I think major issues in Nigeria after 25 years of Nigeria's democratic journey, and that this administration is not a different administration as far as the challenges of rule of law is concerned, as far as the challenges of free, fair, and credible elections are concerned. So I think the president has a daunting challenge. I have daunting challenges to see the possibility of ingraining democracy in Nigeria by creating an atmosphere that is conducive enough for institutions, for structures, for processes, and for procedures that are truly democratic to have their way, in the way in which governments, people, the private sector, individuals, platforms, and organizations can offer their contributions in the strengthening of democratic order in the country. So we can't tell, after 1 year, well enough to say that this administration is different from the previous administration in terms of the limitations of democracy in the country. Of course, freedom of press, we could see that the environment is a bit more freer, it's fairer. We could see active, press and of course, journalists and people all across the country have those very particular, rights to express freely their views, their opinions, and so on and so forth. But of course, when you talk about issues that has to do with rule of law, we still are not in that very particular destination. We have this government has inherited, myriad of challenges that has to do with corruption, that has to do with abuse of office, that has to do with, public officials, important government officials that have been accused of siphoning and embezzling a huge amount of public funds. But we haven't seen credible processes, judicial processes that have been instituted by the government to ensure that those that are actually accused of those, fraudulent practices are actually brought to book. To very large extent, we can still, what has happened in the past 25 years is still happening in this regime. People who appears to be quite above the law, are still, waxes even stronger in this administration. There are lots of accusations, about individuals, about groups, about cliques that have actually held this country and holding this country to ransom, as a result of large-scale public sector corruption. And the government is actually indifferent in trying to. So this is a precedent that is actually bad, and this government must show real sign of commitment to ensuring that the rule of law takes its root in the country. When you talk about active citizenship, the president has just spoken, a bit about the minimum wage or the living wage and the struggle of the NLC and the conversation that is going around. We have seen what has happened, in the last meeting where we saw, police soldiers condoning, the premises of the meeting, the tripartite committee that is meeting about labor. This is enough intimidation to say that, the space is not well, democratized to actually create atmosphere where the people and groups and platforms can actually freely express their views and contest positions of government and what have you. So I think the government have a lot to do. The government has a lot to do to ensure that democracy, the president called a way of life, truly becomes a way of life, because cardinal principles of democracy, of participation, of freedom, of liberty, of the rule of law, of accountability, of transparency. These are, defining elements of democracy that must be engraved, in the way in which the government is organized, in the way in which government actually, relate with the public, which is the source of legitimacy.
Okay. Now, well, the president has captured that in his speech, talking about that in the end, our national greatness will not be achieved by traveling the easy road. It can only be achieved by taking the right one. That is what he said. And he said that in 25 years, we've been able to seemingly steady the cause of our democracy. From your perspective, looking at from 1999 till this point, have we been able to achieve that? And what more can we do to steady the cause?
The honest truth and the bitter truth is that we haven't learned much enough from the past 25 years. It's been election after elections, transitional elections, successful transitional elections, government after government, opposition government taking over power in 2015, which, is still hope among in the minds of Nigerians that democracy has come to stay and that democratic principles will take its roots, after 16 years of the rule by dominant PDP government, and of course, the outcome of the 2015 general elections. So the current ruling, All Progressive Congress taking over power from the ruling party, gave a lot of hope to Nigerians. But of course, what we expected, from the government that took over from another government in 2015, wasn't quite different. Large-scale corruption, public sector corruption, is one major challenge that has been undermining, the credibility, the beauty of democracy in this country. Resources, public resources that are under the care of public officials, which are supposed to be channeled through through for the transformation of society and improvement of the welfare of the people, which is a key component of democratic government. We haven't seen that enough,
All right.
after 25 of government.
Okay, unfortunately our time is up, but we must thank you, Professor Yahaya Tanko Baba, political economist from the Usman Danfodio University, Sokoto. Thank you so much for your time. We need to quickly cross over now to Abuja, to Precious Amayo, who is at the Eagle Square, to bring us up to speed with the activities at the Eagle Square. Precious, good morning. Happy Democracy Day. There's supposed to be a parade this morning. Talk to us what the situation is at the Eagle Square. All right, we'll definitely get back to Precious. We already see that a number of persons are present at the Eagle Square, getting set for the parade that will be happening in a few hours, as it is, or it's supposed to begin actually at 8 o'clock. But we'll get back to Precious. Now let's come back to you, Japhet. Some of the points that our guest, Professor Yahaya Tanko Baba, mentioned with regards to our democracy. The president in his speech said in 25 years we've been able to steady the cause of our democracy, which he said that it seems like we haven't learnt as much lessons from the struggle upon this time.
25 years. We have hinged it on hope. And when Mr. President was coming, he hinged it on renewed hope. So, but we must also be careful so that we don't push people to the edge of hopelessness. That's where the tenets of democracy must be allowed to flourish as a matter of urgency. Democratic principles, constitutional democracy, democratic contests, the true spirit of democracy, periodic electoral process, transparent, which naturally will reduce antagonism, bottled, infighting and all that. Even intra-party democracy. So we must let this come to fruition. It's sad that we are here after the experience of SDP, NRC, that two-party system, beautiful experience. But in the last 20 years too, we've had our ups and downs, 16 years of PDP, was it? Then 8 years of General Buhari, who gave us this June 12, holiday in 2018. And that, again, signals the relevance of June 12. I tell you, the June 12 holiday that Buhari gave in 2018 helped him to return for his second term. People believed, the man who truncated democracy in 1983 came back in 2018 to say, I'm a Democrat. I give you democracy holiday. And he was forgiven, pardoned, and re-elected.
Right.
But that is history.
All right, history indeed. But then sometimes we need to refer to history to, situate things. In the publisher Ovation Magazine, Dele Momodu, joining us right now. Good morning. Happy Democracy Day. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. Let's begin with, I'm certain that you listened to the president's speech this morning. Let's begin with your perspective of your perception of the president of the speech and the major highlights for you.
For me, as a 64-year-old Nigerian, I have listened to more than enough speeches. And maybe it's becoming monotonous. Maybe the speeches are just meant to douse tension. but the speeches at the end of the day amount to nothing. It's just like the annual budgets. And we all wait patiently for the budget. And then the budget offers so many promises. Or X amount of money has been allocated to education, to aviation, to health, and so on. And at the end of the day, the year will just roll by and nothing new would have happened.
Why do you think
Yes,
so?
well, I don't know. It's lack of sincerity on the part of those who govern Nigeria. It's lack of sincerity. There are people, there are speech writers, of which you know I am a writer myself, who just write what they think the public wants to hear. And then they bring the principal to a recording room and they record a speech already written. And the job of the principal is to be an actor, read the speech, and your aides will clap, oh, you well delivered, sir.
So invariably, you're
And we all
saying
know
this is not a true reflection of the president's intention for the people.
well, I am not clairvoyant, but I am pessimistic about Nigeria at my age. That's why I told you I've listened to more than enough speeches. For example, the president says our funds, the reforms initiated by our government would lay a solid foundation for Nigeria. If at 64, I was born in the year of our independence, if at 64, we're still laying foundation, I wonder when we are going to build the house. The Yoruba have a saying, if it takes us 20 years to prepare for madness, when are we going to run mental? So if we're still laying a foundation at 64, then something is critically wrong with us. That is number one. The president says, I feel your pain. I doubt. Why do I doubt? I doubt because if you feel the pain of the ordinary people, this government will not go on a binge the way they have been. We just witnessed the opening of a new building, a new home for the vice president, costing over 20 billion. A government that feels the pain of the people will not embark on such outlandish and ambitious projects at this time. The reason why the people are not ready to tighten their belt is that they've realized that government after government tells them, oh, tighten your belt, it's for your sake, it's for your future. But it turns out to be a case of do as I say and not as I do. So when a leader says, I feel your pain, he must show it, he must reflect it in every way. But unfortunately, we have not seen this. If you ask me what has been the biggest sin of this government in the last 1 year, it is this lack of frugality. We thought we have seen it all, and a new government that will introduce very painful decisions would show in action, not in word, that yes, we mean what we are saying and we will do it. So going forward, my advice to the government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu is that they should begin to demonstrate positive action and not just these eye-fabricating words of, oh, I feel your pain, oh, we are laying a foundation. It's like taking a patient to a doctor. Right. The patient is breathing at the time he arrives at the doctor's office. Then the doctor gives just one injection and the patient faints. This is what we have witnessed in 1 year. This patient that got to the doctor wasn't feeling fine. He had cold symptoms, he had headache, and suddenly from those minor ailments, the man goes into coma. Something is wrong. You cannot call that laying of a foundation.
Unfortunately,
So,
our time is up. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's
Unfortunately, our time is up. We can't move forward with this conversation as it is because we need to quickly go on a break and we have other guests waiting to join us. But we must thank you, Dylan Momodu, publisher, Ovation Magazine, for your time on the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you.
And you too. We must also thank you, Japhet Odesanya, for your time. You've spent almost a major part of this morning with us, but thank you so much
My pleasure.
for your time as well. We need to quickly go.